Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and I just got back from the new film, A Hijacking. It's a Danish film, a Danish cargo ship which is hijacked by Somali pirates, and then the film is half about what's going on the boat, going with the cook, who has kind of become the de facto kind of leader of the group, or at least the one the Somali pirates will talk to, and will let talk to the Danish shipping company. And the other half of the film takes place in the Danish shipping company with the CEO, who's like a tough negotiator, and he thinks he is the one who should be negotiating with these Somali pirates, even though he is told that's really not a good idea. They should bring in someone special for that, but he insists to do it because he is a very good negotiator, at least on the corporate level. He is trying to negotiate with these Somali pirates, and it goes on for months and months and months. And the film is really about the negotiations and how long these kind of hijackings can take. And it's really not about so much the hijacking itself, so much so that they don't actually show it. It's kind of shown a little bit, but not really. You don't get an amazing hijacking scene. Most of the film is about the crew being imprisoned on the ship and being stuck there by these Somali pirates. And they have this translator named Omar, who's basically the only pirate you really meet. It's really kind of cold and distinct on who it's going to talk about. The major characters are like Omar, the cook, and Peter, the CEO. Really, the action of the film is the negotiating, and between Omar and Peter, and having Mikhail, the cook, sometimes come on the phone, but very rarely. It's kind of withholding certain information to kind of show you how kind of drawn out these negotiations can really be between, a corporation and Somali pirates, and especially one that doesn't know what they're doing. Some have criticized this film, saying that the way it's telling the story, it's a different way to tell the story, because I think, obviously I haven't seen that Tom Hanks film, Captain Phillips, because it hasn't come out yet, but the trailer of that film is pretty much all the hijacking scene, and this just doesn't have it, and it's far more about the negotiations, and it's colder and psychological and like a thriller, but it's like almost emotionless, but it's very emotional at the same time, very straightforward and very gritty. Like a traditional thriller is like very much playing for your emotions, and you know exactly what it's going to do. There's certain points where I don't know exactly what it's going to do. It will withhold Mikhail for a little bit. I'm not sure if he's dead or if he's not dead. I don't know if Peter knows what he's doing or doesn't know what he's doing, and he almost feels like he is a prisoner as well as the people on his ship. Now, I know this director is from Danish TV. He did the show The Borgen. I've never seen that show. A lot of people say it's like that show, and I've read reviews and such from people who have seen that show who say it's too much like that show and things like that. I can't really speak on that, but as a film by itself, I found this to be a really cool thriller. There's not many thrillers who play with the genre as much as A Hijacking is, and it is very tense, but it's just like a tense negotiating movie, which is an interesting idea. The two actors who really make this film really interesting is the guy who's playing Peter, and the guy who's playing the cook, Mikhail. And Peter is played by Søren Malling. I think that's how you say his name. I'm sorry if I'm butchering any of the Danish language. He is really cold and collective and cool, and he thinks he's like this great corporate CEO, but you can tell he's over his head, and it's almost like he doesn't want to give in. Like he feels like he can get through this, and like he's so into it. Even if they want him to leave, he doesn't want to leave. He keeps going on, and clearly, like, he shouldn't. I mean, the guy they bring in, the advisor, is like, you really should bring in someone else, and he doesn't, because earlier in the film we see he's a great negotiator. He always gets what he wants, and I feel like I've read, I think it was like the AO Scout review or something, I forget which one, and then he mentions it feels like the Somali pirates almost did it to kind of mess with this executive. It definitely feels like they have totally destroyed his world, not because I think he kind of cares about the people, but I think mostly because he can't solve this problem. It's not an easy problem, and he knows people will die, and it's not this safe corporate world. It's not just stupid money between corporations. None of it had a face to it. None of it had a life to it, and he's in this sterile corporate environment all the time. It's a world he understands, and he feels like he can do any negotiation in kind of like a stupid guy kind of way, but it was totally misguided, because he's basically like playing with these people's lives. He knows he's doing this, and he's not giving in. The whole hijacking and waiting for the prisoners to be released at this ransom, I think it's slowly eating away at him, but he doesn't want to admit it. He wants to keep going in this kind of like tunnel vision that he has throughout it, this like stupid dog tunnel vision that he has. And Søren Malling is really great at that. It's hurting him, that he has this ego about himself that he can't let go of. He's the kind of corporate guy who comes in and gets shit done, and he doesn't want to let any of that go. And that's kind of what's drawing out this whole thing. I kind of don't think it would have lasted as long if they had gotten someone. And at the beginning you're like, oh, maybe he can, you know, maybe this will work out. Johann Philipp Asbeck, I think that's how you say his name, who plays Mikhail, does a great transformation where at the beginning of the film he looks like so lively and alive, and he's like this young cool chef, and by the end he looks so drained and destroyed by it. And it's like an interesting physical transformation. There's a lot of physicality in his performance that he really brings through, and he's really like the protagonist, the guy you really want to follow, the cool, nice, relatable guy. But you kind of see how hard it is being kidnapped and held hostage by these Somali pirates, and how like daunting and psychologically scarring it really is. This film's really about what most of this situation would be about. The actual hijacking itself is kind of superfluous. It's interesting to see a film that is almost like structured like kind of a Hollywood film. It's made in a Hollywood way, basically, but it's decided like, well, does this action sequence really matter to the story ultimately? And to have a film like A Hijacking do that in such a way to just remove it completely, I don't even know if they shot it or they just didn't think it worked or whatever. I've seen foreign films where it's basically like a Hollywood film, but it's made in another country. I mean, it's not a Hollywood film, but it basically feels like one. And A Hijacking is very much like that. And reminds me of a French film I saw called Wrapped. And I didn't like Wrapped that much, but I like A Hijacking. And I think the reason is Wrapped was too much close to a regular, ordinary thriller and had nothing particularly that special about it. To what I remember, it was like 2 years ago. But Hijacking is different, and Hijacking is emotional and cold. I would say the storytelling is economical, but in a very distinct, kind of straightforward way, and it's like playing with the audience in what you know and what you don't know, and what you will know for a little bit, and you're never sure where it's going to cut, and it gives you certainly an uneasy, thrilling feeling, and it moves like kind of like a crappy paperback book you read at the beach or something, but it's emotionally playing with you a lot more than those are. Those are kind of fake emotions where you know exactly what it's going to do. You know, it's not as surprising. I would find this a lot more surprising. And I thought it was a very smartly directed thriller just because it's so different. And to remove such a big sequence like the Somali pirates actually coming on the ship and them seeing the Somali pirates coming and everything, it's just like you see the ship, you go to the corporate offices and they find out about it, and then you hear a little thing and you see a little bit afterwards. And it's very daring, and I think a lot of directors couldn't balance that, because a lot of films who have a big action sequence, it's there to keep you engaged. The film actually really needs it. For a film that could have that and could use it to like amp up the excitement and really get you in there is very daring, and the fact that they pulled it off shows how strong this director really is. I think that's kind of ballsier than I've seen from any action sequences doing a film like this, where you're just like, well, let's remove it, it's superfluous, the film isn't about this. I don't know if Hollywood would let you make a film like this because they'd want you to shoot the action sequence. That's one of the cool things about having films that are outside the Hollywood system or foreign films, is you can take these risks. So you could say it's like a smartly structured, like almost like regular crime drama, but it's not totally reinventing the genre, but it's an interesting twist on kind of the hijacking drama. This and Kon-Tiki recently are both films that remind me of the storytelling we used to get from older Hollywood. It's really gripping and gritty in some ways, but then you cut to The Office in Copenhagen and it's like sterile and cold and there's not much emoting, and cutting between those worlds kind of shows, it almost shows, reminds me a bit of Body of Lies, if you ever saw the Ridley Scott movie. And it's kind of talking about the difference between people who are just on their cell phones making these world decisions and people actually doing kind of the grunt work. This isn't trying to say that as much, but it's kind of examining, you know, you have these corporate people in their offices making these big decisions for these people who are in these horrible conditions. It's an interesting juxtaposition, and that juxtaposition actually ends up saying a lot. That's one of the things I liked about older Hollywood, is you could have a simple story and it could be saying a lot about a lot of different things. You can really read into the hijacking that, but at the end of the day, I think it's really a cool, cold, great kind of thriller, but it's also kind of like a more arty popcorn film. This is really kind of taking that idea of having like a foreign film that's very like a Hollywood production and doing something kind of different with it that you really couldn't do in the studio system, and that's something I really like about the hijacking. So if you have seen A Hijacking and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments, and subscribe if you would like to. I'm not sure how to say the Danish title. It's Kapringen? I'm not sure, so I didn't try except for the ending. I didn't want to start the video off like that. I don't know.